Welcome to round number 2. See if we can have a little bit of an easier time this time. We've got a reasonable hand though, so it's a good start. We finally drew these Aether Vials before turn 3 or whatever we've been drawing them on. So we'll throw this down. I say finally, it's match number 2, but you get the idea. Alright. Hallowed Fountain. Hopefully blue-white and not Just Sky. Just Sky would be tough here. I'm going to lead on Freebooter here, save a life point with the Sigurd rather than the Horizon Canopy. Ooh, it is blue-white. Sweet. Alright. I mean, I honestly think I just take the Spreading Seas here. It doesn't really affect me very heavily at the moment, but the cantrip early matters. And I can worry about this Cryptic Command later. Might as well just try to make their hand more awkward. It's like the best I can do at this point, I think. Just got to keep them off of path for a little while. Flooded Strand. Perfect. That's a new one. Drop this guy in. Or madam. Take this vial up to 2. Unless I want to spend mana on vial. I guess I even could spend mana on vial and still use all my mana. So let's go ahead and pop this. Yeah, that's not great. Well, I don't really have the luxury of playing around anything. So let's just jam. Let's just jam our spells. And again, my opponent currently has nothing to play around. In a couple turns, they may. Next turn, even, they may. But for now, there's nothing for us to worry about. We have perfect information. So I'll just go and do this now rather than like attack first. But I'll just put as much power and toughness on the board as we can. And get in for a meager 3 here. I do want to take this up to 3 because, I mean, obviously there's a lot of 2s I want to violent and instant speed, but if I draw Horizon Canopy and crack it and draw a 3-drop, I won't be able to do so without taking this, won't be able to play it without taking this up. Alright, well, that's not good. So, it's a matchup where we need to close quickly, and flooding will not allow us to do that. If they have like Ambush Viper here, rather they do have Ambush Viper here, they can use it to trade with either of these things, but I'm contented with that at this point. I think I still need to turn stuff sideways rather than just attack for 4. Maybe I'll come to regret that, but this puts us to a point where Thalia's Lieutenant is lethal. The problem, obviously, is now that Phantasmal Image is not. Though Phantasmal Image would still be good to violin in their draw step. And again, it doesn't really matter, I suppose, since they have the Cryptic at this stage. Another reason why it's good for me to get rid of that Ambush Viper now, since they're about to see a lot more cards. Alright, well, let's go to combat. Opponent tap draws, no big surprise there. Play 3, but Inspector, get our clue. I'm going to crack it now. Phantasmal Image. You do generally want to play all your lands out since you can have a lot of canopy lines with your mana a little bit restricted. I think I am going to try and draw step this. Obviously my opponent. I should have done this. They could have click. Some of these blue-white lists have main deck click. I should have tapped this vial first. I think there's a lot of like spots where it's not really worth trying to vial trick your opponent, but when click is a possibility, I think there's a lot of equity to be gained where if you're like tapping your Aether Vials otherwise like really in an expected fashion, just like tapping one, putting it into play like every time, and then you anticipate a chance of a click. If you tap the wrong one first, they would click in response to that, and then you get the opportunity to tap the right one. And obviously you do that too many times and your opponent might not fall for it either, and then it gets a little bit more diluted, but you get the idea. Yeah, so they did draw another Cryptic. Fortunately, we get to sort of get it out of their hand that way, but Champion does bite it for the cause. All right, they did find a Snapcaster, which is troublesome for us. So basically we want to leave 2 Spreading Seas in here. Plains Island, Snap, Search, Leak. So just not these. Okay. Leak certainly does not matter. Search matters, but is likely too slow. The question is Spreading Seas really that much faster that it's worth it? Probably not. I guess I just take the more powerful card here. I'm not really particularly excited about taking any of those cards. Now we're just going to draw Thalia's Lieutenant, right? No and no. Reflector Mage, not exactly. So my opponent's hand doesn't really have anything to slow us down. Obviously they need to draw something, but they do get to snap Cryptic. The question is whether it's worth adding anything to the board. It would seem not. Problem with this, of course, is if my opponent draws Path, it's like suddenly I don't have lethal just from one path. Obviously, if they drew... I guess they also have the Snapcaster. Yeah, I probably have to commit this. And it's not like holding this... My opponent's pretty low, so holding like every card can matter. But I need to be able to beat the cards they already have, and I don't have lethal just from Snapcaster if I don't play this. I guess I do with Reflector, but I would prefer not to be in a spot where I have to vial Reflector a Snapcaster Mage. I would do it if it was the difference between lethal and not lethal, but so is playing this champion out right now. I mean, the best case scenario for Reflector in this matchup is hitting a Colonnade, which is not terribly likely either. Okay, opponent drew another land. We say no, no. Just go straight to combat. And this turn, we are faced with the same decision, but I don't see a lot of incentive to throw anything on the table. Especially with the opponent having to crack a Flooded Strand down to 4. So they're going to tap our team and draw a card, I would assume. Man, it'd be so sweet if we had like Thalia there. Just like Violent Thalia in response to the target. It'd be gross. Alright, opponent has Plains, Seas, Mana Leak, Mystery. Oh, that's not good. I guess they found the Wrath. But we can draw Mantis Rider in combination with this Reflector Mage. Yeah. If only we had a 2 instead of this Champion of the Parish. It's the difference between closing this game and being in a pretty bad spot, honestly. Like, it's rough from here. They have one mystery card. Opponent could also have Path as a mystery card. I mean, definitely possible, but we'll see. Yeah, that's frustrating. Okay. Well, I guess we're coming across playing this. And I did say you always want to play these out because of Canopy, but with the many lenses we have, plus multiple vials, I think it's just actually more important that I pretend that I have something on my vials. What do with that scry? Bottom. Well, that's good at least. Now I just need them to not draw a great one off of this, which is pretty hard. Supreme Verdict, that'll do, since I still... This is another turn where I guess I win if I have a guy to violin, but hopefully we find Mantis Rider. I'm sure it's on top. I'm sure it's there. Always is. All right, Ziggurat. Man, this is a sad one. I don't think we can win with another turn of Escanta-ing, but hey, our opponent could brick really hard. You never know. This is a real bummer though. Like, this is definitely a game I think our deck picks up on average, but not this time. Do they brick? No, they got an opt. Put it on the bottom. I mean, another turn where we could draw Mantis Rider, I suppose. It's gonna be like a Gideon. Yeah, this feels like Gideon Emblem. Oh. And I don't have a Cavern. Now I can't play around. Man, I should have played this out. So bad. Alright. Alright. Every turn, the percentage gets lower and lower and lower as we let our opponent untap with this Escanta. No cards. I mean, all right. Sure. Sure. It's pretty hard to fathom that, like, maybe they haven't found a path yet. Like, that's pretty hard to envision. Jeez. All right. We're having a rough day. Oops. Alright, put on a ton of mystery cards. Activating Escanta again. Find Gideon Jura. So that should pretty much lock us up. They also have Colonnade to block this turn, so I guess we were already pretty locked out. I mean, I could name like Path Verdict. Opponent ticks up to 10. I draw like Mantis Rider, and I guess Mantis Rider. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I mean, if I name Path Verdict, then draw Mantis Rider, they still get to minus. I just don't really have a better choice right now, unfortunately. I can play around this mana leak. How lucky. I can double spell and play around this mana leak. Easy game. It's possible I should have named Snap. I don't know. It's kind of... I guess they probably only have one more Verdict. Snap's got to be better. No, they've used 2 snaps already, and this is blue-white, so... They're on 0 to 1 snaps left. There's 1 D-Sphere, 1-ish Verdict. Gideon, I guess, of the Trials, maybe, was the name? Instead of Verdict. Path is definitely the name. Bonus has 0 paths. But, they've also been through 2 Cryptics. That's probably not the name. Oh, we're getting in. We don't even want to eat these Meddling Mages in combat. Not even... Actually, no, they still get to. They have 1,000,000 lands, so... Easy peasy. Alright, let's fire this off. Just a second now. Freebooter. Obviously that can get mana leaked. Pretty much can't afford to ever get a spell mana leaked, so... And that doesn't stop my opponent from eating my guy in combat. I assume we get the Path 1 eaten. Unfortunately. Oh, we're tapping the... We're just getting settled? Must just be getting settled. Yeah, okay. Sure. Still couldn't get my guy mana leaked, so... Alright, well, I think I'm going to have to pack it in here. With the Jura, there's just basically no way I can close this game out, so... That was a real unfortunate one, though. It really looked like a game that we could easily overtake if we just had a couple less lands. It's probably all we're realistically interested in here. And frankly, there's not a ton I'm not interested in. We're already sort of constructed in a way that I like in this matchup. 3 Malcontents may be too many, but these are still, even against decks like these, often Lava Spike. And in blue-white in particular, against blue-white in particular, they're really wrathing you more often than they're like dealing with you guys 1-for-1, or something like Jeskai or Jund or whatever is going to be killing them 1-for-1. And even against Jeskai or Jund, these are often Lava Spike. Against blue-white, these can be much, much greater than that the turn before your opponent wraths. And it also feels great because it's not a card you feel bad like over-committing with, since you get a lot of value off of it up front. But that does put me in a spot where I basically don't want to cut any of these cards. My opponent has a couple ways to target Phantasmal Images that are sort of frustrating, like getting to the Trials, for example. Killing Illusions is pretty big bummer. Obviously, it's not that big of a bummer if you copy Thalia's Lieutenant or a Kessig Malcontents and still got a lot of value out of it. But if you're copying like Freebooters or Meddling Mages, that can be a little bit more of a bummer. I might shave a couple of those. I can't see going under 2, though. Man, maybe Thraben Inspector's too slow, but if I don't want Thraben Inspector here, I just don't want Thraben Inspector. Not really sold on its play patterns yet, but I can see the appeal of having an additional 1-drop for sure. I think I'm going to shave 2 of these. And then maybe I will shave 1 of these. Just don't really see cutting anything else. Yeah, I mean, all the other cards seem great. I need the vials for velocity here. This hand is tough, right? Because we have so many of these elements. But honestly, against blue-white, I really value being fast. I just can't really pass up a hand with double freeboot or meddling mage phantasmal image, though. It's just enough disruption to usually lock out blue-white. Their removal suite is not incredibly diverse. Now, obviously, our opponent respected humans enough and other similar decks, Dredge. Not necessarily similar, but rather, what I'm getting at is that they respect decks enough to have Settle the Wreckage in their main deck. I think I'm going to postpone the Cavern Decision till next turn or later and play the Canopy this turn instead. We don't really care about losing the life, and I'm not sure whether we're going to want to name Illusion or Human yet. Cast Freebooter. Glimmer Search Verdict. Well, I'm going to take Search since we have a million freebooters. Problem with a million freebooters is they don't put on pressure particularly fast. My opponent does get a draw step. This time though, their draw step produced a land. I think I'm needing to go Meddling Mage into Meddling Mage. That is Path into Verdict, rather than like freeboot them. If I freeboot a Verdict, they can just draw another Verdict. If I Meddling Mage Path, or if I Meddling Mage Verdict, they can draw Path. If I Meddling Mage Verdict and Path, they're in a pretty rough spot. Also, Champion helps me put on pressure here. Shoot. That is frustrating. That is not what I meant to do. Ugh. Now I'm going to have to do it a little bit differently. I wanted to name Illusion there, obviously, which is why I was describing this line. I just autopiloted that while I was talking. Let's see here. Alright, well now that I'm stuck in this spot, I think I have to go Champion Freebooter, take Verdict. No, I guess I go... I just have to skip the Path step. Still name Verdict. And then if I draw a land that casts Phantasmal Image next turn, I can alleviate my error by naming Path just out of order. And if I don't... then I can just freeboot. Or that, I suppose. That certainly clears that up. 2, 3, 9, 10. I guess Thalia's Lieutenant is lethal. Let's freeboot first. Drawing that land was actually great, because now I can freeboot first to check for Settle, which is like the only card that we lose to. Cryptic, I guess, stops us as well, but alright, sweet. We got there. Unless I'm miscounting. 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, okay. Having a glimmer in response to that. I guess this is 14 since I got the cast freebooter. Having a glimmer in response to that is rough. Yeah, I mean, seer visions. Drawing that champion last turn was a big game as well. The difference that it made in our clock is huge. Although we were in a pretty good spot from there, even without it. All right. Man, maybe I was wrong to be cutting these images. Maybe I'm supposed to have all images and no 3-bit inspectors. Just feels like really weird. Maybe it's just because it's not a 1-for-1 matchup. The 3-bit inspectors don't feel great. But again, like if I don't want 3-bit inspectors here, why are they in my deck? How am I gonna ever? I don't know. I guess I want them in matchups where I don't want the max freebooters and meddling mages and stuff like that. Like right now, my current configuration is much more like the deck lists I have been playing where I wasn't playing 3-bit inspector. Like all of my 3s seem very good, and I'm not interested in cutting any of them. Like I could see forcing myself to shave a malcontents. That was hard to get out. Force myself to shave a malcontents if it really came down to it. But I think the card's great here, which also incentivizes me to have more images. Yeah, I don't see myself keeping a 5-mana source hand, even if there is a canopy. That doesn't really redeem this hand. Yeah, I mean this hand's not really better. It's another 2-spell hand. The average 5 I think is not going to be better though. Goodness, this is gonna be real tough. Maybe the average 5 is better. Maybe I do have to go down to 5. It's weird how this is a spell that I feel like I can't keep here. Not because I kind of need something else to do on turn 2. I'd really like to not be casting Champion of the Parish. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe I go champion, copy champion, and then if they have path, I just lose the game on the spot, though. Yeah, I think I have to bottom this and look for a disruptive element. That is a disruptive element, but not one of the 2s, unfortunately. Much rather lead on this in case my opponent has Spreading Seas that they're interested in casting. They bottom a card with that opt. Search for Escanta. All right. Well, we did draw the freebooter. That's great. Still don't need to play this, I suppose. Whoops, that's not going to do it. All right. Disenchant, you say? That seems not outstanding in the matchup, but you do what you gotta do, I suppose. We'll definitely take Gideon Jura. Obviously, Search for Escanta can fix a lot of problems, but it looks like our opponent's first few draw steps have not gone particularly well. They chose to keep their top card, though, so that one's probably better. That one's probably better. Unless it was a misclick. You never know. All right, Hallowed Fountain tapped. Interesting. So maybe it was Path, maybe it was Verdict. Either way, Sin Collector is probably the best use of my turn. If it's Path, I'm probably supposed to attack first. But I think it's gonna be Verdict or Settle. I'm gonna just go for this instead of trying to overthink it here. We'll try to get max damage. Yeah, that stinks. Wanted that to be a verdict too bad, I suppose. So Flooded Strand, Field of Ruin in my opponent's hand, getting Jura under my freebooter. And a Glacial Fortress. Opponent takes a random draw after that and plays Field of Ruin. Just going to activate Field, perhaps? No, we drew a verdict after that. Those cards came in the wrong order for me. Alright, well, I got to deal with this Gideon Jura now, so I think it's just going to be Meddling Mage, Thalia's Lieutenant. I'd rather the Meddling Mage be a 3-3 and this be a 1-1 than they both be 2-2s, I suppose. Blue, white. Search for Azcanta, pretty great magic card. Turning the Glacial Fortress draw into a Supreme Verdict draw is definitely good stuff. Oh gosh, they get to flip this. That's unfortunate. We're not putting on very much pressure either. Chooses not to put the top card in. That's not good either. It's Trials. Might be D-Sphere. It's probably Trials. Okay, Wall of Omens. Sure. That's plenty annoying here. Yeah, I guess it's just got to be Verdict. Just the most copies. They probably on 4 post board. Maybe less because of the settles, but it was very fortunate to draw a creature there as well, because now I can copy Thalia's Lieutenant and everything's big enough to get past this Wall of Omens. Obviously, that's a little bit greedier than, say, like copy Meddling Mage named Path. But I think it's just really important to put on an immense amount of pressure with this flipping next turn. I'm a little surprised my opponent wasn't willing to bin this Wall of Omens to flip their search, but I suppose it doesn't really matter. There's not a lot that they were able to use their mana on that turn, so I guess it makes a lot of sense for them to keep the wall on top since they were only on 3 mana. It's not like they were going to be able to really utilize their search at that point. Anyway, just waiting another turn to flip it is probably just as good, I suppose. Though they could have just played Flooded Strand that turn instead of Field of Ruin. And then binned basically whatever, and then had like a lot of mana on their turn. That probably would have put them in a better spot, because then at the very least they would have had an Azcanta activation last turn, which is probably better than just playing a Wall of Omens. We're going to have to keep drawing pretty hot from here, though, to really be able to get this one. It's going to be close, though. All of our 3s are basically just outstanding draws here. Sin Collector, obviously, being the weakest of those, but any of the Malcontents, yeah, that's not bad. It offers a pretty interesting play pattern, too. Cryptic is the worst case scenario here, but I am not going to play around that. I'm going to choose to play this, because if my opponent has Path or needs to look for Path, then they're going to either cast Path immediately or Azcanta looking for Path. If they have Settle, they're not going to Azcanta first, and then I'm going to have to name Settle. But if they Azcanta first, then I probably will name Path, right? Just because it's a greater quantity. If they have Snap Path, they're also pretty heavily incentivized to do that right now, rather than wait. So, all in all, a tough decision for my opponent. They could just try to, they could assume some of the things that I'm saying, like that they could imagine that I'm thinking a lot of these things, but it's pretty hard to like not cast path or not snap path here. Oh, geez, it was cryptic. Surprised. I guess they were just thinking about whether they wanted to bounce something, but yeah, that's undoubtedly the worst case scenario for me by a long shot. That stinks. Main phase activated content is good for me, I suppose. Only got a spreading seas as well. Did we just get there? And are they, I guess they might be looking for, they have a white source looking for path? No, just island? Yeah, I mean, that helps even more, so, okay, sweet. Well, I'll definitely take that. We're a little lucky, I should say a lot lucky, I think, to come out with the W in this particular game. There was that turn, I think my opponent was probably better off. I mean, they didn't even end up blocking with the Swallow of Omens this game. I mean, they would have blocked this turn, of course, but I think my opponent was probably better off playing. I know it's really appealing to Field of Ruin, strip mine me, but I wonder if they would have been better off. No, they must have used their mana on something else. I must be misremembering it, because they would have fielded me in my end step, and they fielded in their own upkeep. But even if they did use their mana on something else, that they still could have just cracked their Flooded Strand, and that would have put them to 6 cards. And then they could bin anything off of Escanta and would have had at least 5 or 6 mana. I can't remember with the Escanta. So, you know, worst case scenario, they get an Escanta activation. I don't know. As far as what we did this game, I'm not sure there was much I could have done differently either. Although the previous game, the misstep on Cavern of Souls or Unclaimed Territory now, I can't remember which, certainly would almost cost us. But I drew out of it, which is very fortunate. Either way, I think that's all there really is to talk about this particular match. But I will see you in the next round in just a moment.